Hello, welcome to Convergent Dialogues. This is Xavier Bonilla. In this episode, I have Angel Eduardo. Angel is a writer and photographer, designer, and in this episode, we talk about one of his major pieces that he wrote, and we also talk about some of the themes within the Latin community in today's society at present. We start out this episode talking about his piece, which is a kind of an exposition of distinctions between words and ideas. We talk about the value of intention and the importance of context. And then we get into how this sort of applies in terms of how people will try to use certain arguments to kind of have this revisionist history. And we talk about, we provide plenty of examples for what this looks like and kind of more recently. We then launch into this discussion about the Latin community and Hispanics, broadly in Latin America, but then also in the United States as well. So we give our own backgrounds. I'm half Latin. He's, I think, 100% Latin. And we talk about the differences with the terms Hispanic, Latino, Spanish. We get into some of the complex nuances within the Caribbean. We talk about the regional differences in Latin America, and then also within the United States, and how that kind of becomes imported here. We talk about the underlying and encompassing themes of Latin culture. We talk about the subcategories within Latin culture and how that disperses here, and then how this breaks down with the differences in politics. We also talk about Latinx towards the end. And, I have to say, when I was listening to this episode again, we hit the Latinx thing pretty hard and kind of get a little bit loose in how we talk about it. And, I think he says it and I say it, but just to kind of reiterate this point, we get the intention of these things, and we want to make sure that we are inclusive of people, and to be very mindful and considerate of people's plight and how they approach things. But, our criticisms are mostly on the term itself, how it's not really received by many people in the Latin community. And, having a broader discussion about, what's the utility of using this, and what's, again, kind of what are the intentions behind this. So this was a really fun conversation. Him and I get on well together. We have a very nice dynamic, and I greatly enjoyed talking about all these things with him, and hope to get him on the podcast sometime soon. So now I bring you Angel Eduardo.
I'm here with Angel Eduardo. What's going on, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Of course. We've been talking often online, and I was like, man, I got to get you on here soon. And so here we are.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Yeah, you got a really nice way of, I think, interacting, and got a really sharp mind of how to engage with ideas. So I'm really excited to kind of do the long form of it. Twitter is cool for some things, but not conducive for long conversations, trying to expand upon, ideas and concepts. So,
Right.
So tell listeners a little bit about yourself, just kind of your potted biography. Just tell us, what your background is, what you currently do, some of the pieces you've written. I'll put it in the notes and stuff like that, but just kind of give us a snapshot of who you are and what you do, and what you're working on.
Sure. So I'm a writer, musician, photographer, though not as often anymore. And I do, graphic design work and stuff like that, mostly for my own projects, like whatever bands I'm in and that sort of thing. I usually do the flyers and the album art and whatever. I'm a writer and content creator and kind of jack of all trades for idealist.org. It's basically a nonprofit job board, but there's some activism sort of stuff. The basic premise is we want to try to connect people who are doing good in the world or who want to do good in the world. We want to take those good intentions and turn them into action by connecting them with organizations that are looking for people just like that. So that's my day job. And I'm also a columnist for the Center for Inquiry, Richard Dawkins Foundation. And when I have time, I write other things, mostly essays and memoir pieces, things like that, whenever I can find the spare minute.
That's great. Are you working on anything now? You don't have to tell us what it is, but anything now? Anything in the pipeline?
Yeah, actually, I just submitted another one for the Center for Inquiry.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. We'll see what they say. The basic premise is that selfishness is actually a virtue. And the reason that we think it isn't is because people are too short-sighted with it. So basically, we're not selfish enough. If we were as selfish as we should be, that would lead us to be as kind and generous and compassionate as possible, because it's in our self-interest to, encourage that sort of behavior. So that's the basic idea there.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
How that goes. I've tried it on a few people, and
no one takes it up.
It's that selfishness is a trigger word. So
it's a nice hook. I like it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not doing that thing where I'm redefining a term. I'm just kind of holding people to its definition more stringently than I guess everyone else does. Yeah. So that's the basic thing. I've got some other stuff going on. It's the end of the year, so I'm trying to wind down a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm hopefully going to take some time last week or so of the year. And then I took teaching off this semester. So I'm going to get back at it in the spring. So I'll be pretty busy. So I'm recording a bunch of these now while I have the time. And then I probably won't be recording, but releasing in January and everything. So
that's a good idea.
I hear you on taking some time. It's necessary, which sounds weird, right? Because we've all been at home for 10 months, but still super busy. So
yeah, but in a weird way, our brains are kind of more fried because we're working and living and trying to find some sense of normalcy all in the same place. If we're lucky, and it can be stressful.
Yeah, one of my goals. We'll see if I can do it. I wanted to at least finish this piece I'm doing about the experience of space and the boundaries of space and how it's kind of impacted us this year during the pandemic. Because I think that's exactly what it is that everybody's doing everything in the same physical space. And there's some utility to the boundaries of space that help us to kind of parse out and separate things. And so when that doesn't happen, I think it is kind of just frying our brains. It's making it difficult. So we'll see if I get it done. Okay. So a few things on the item list that I want to get into. So let's maybe start with your piece that you wrote for, was it Arrow? Was it the words and ideas? Yeah. Kind of give us, again, I'll post it in the notes for everybody to read it, but kind of give us the overview, the snapshot of it, what your main thesis is and what you're hoping to achieve and with that article, and then we can get into some of the finer points.
Yeah. So it's called Words Don't Hurt, Ideas Do. And the motivation for it is really that I'm tired of having that conversation. Words are violence. Words hurt. That sort of thing. And it's basically my highlighting of the mistake that I think people are making when they say what they're saying that way. So I know what they mean. Someone's mean to us. Someone says something terrible or hurtful to us. It hurts. I'm not disputing that. I think the problem is really the focus on the words themselves. So the idea that if we just got rid of the word idiot, for example. You know, if we just stopped calling people idiot or stupid, that somehow that would eliminate the problem, but it doesn't really. It just basically creates a void where now we have to find some other word to replace it with. It's the euphemism treadmill that I think Steven Pinker talked about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the basic idea there. And it's the sort of thing where, especially for me, I hear it a lot because I am pretty stridently anti-speech policing.
Mm-hmm.
I flare up the minute I hear about, banning words and trying to stop people from speaking a certain way and that sort of thing. I see it as counterproductive. I see it as, slipping into a kind of totalitarianism, for want of a less extreme sounding word for it, but it's a control thing that I worry about and I see as completely unproductive. Like we're basically going to excise all these words from our lexicon and stay with the problem that we were trying to solve in the first place. So basically, I'm tired of having that conversation, and now I can just link people to this article where I've tried to craft the argument as well as I possibly can.
Yeah, I think you do a great job in the piece. I mean, I read it a while back and reread it, and I think it's really good. I think that it sounds like there's a few things with it, right? It sounds like there's one piece of it that is okay. I'll come back to the words piece in a minute, but if it's not the words and it's the ideas, how do you know what the ideas are that people are trying to express outside of how we understand what the words are using? And, is there some aspect of it that is you're trying to have some evaluation or attribution on their intentions, right? So it sounds like there's this, you're more concerned, it seems, with the behind the curtain kinds of things, namely the ideas, and then maybe, you correct me if I'm wrong, the intentions behind certain ideas. Is that about accurate? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's about intentions. I get into it in the piece a little bit. That's really what we're talking about. We're talking about what people mean. And I give the example of, picture somebody just berating you, but it's in a language that you don't speak. So you don't understand what they're saying, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you can infer hostility from their tone, maybe, right? Unless they're being very slick about it. So that might be enough, right? You might just, I know that what you're saying is meant to hurt my feelings, and that's upsetting. Mm-hmm. But nobody can really argue that if you understood every word they were saying, it would be worse. It would be more bothersome, right? Mm-hmm. And it's because the fact that you can understand what they're saying, that you can process the ideas they're trying to communicate to you, right, whatever they are, whatever hurtful, hateful idea it is, you're receiving it, processing it through your brain, and then reacting to that. Mm-hmm. And so you are an active participant in this communication, this process, right? And so what's happening there is you are receiving an intention. They have the intention to harm you, right? You can infer it if you don't understand what they're saying, but you can't really know for sure what it is that they're trying to say, what the idea actually is. Mm-hmm. Like if they're calling you, if they're making fun of the fact that you're short, or, if they're being overtly racist, you won't really know because you can't understand the words. You can't understand what the words are meant to mean. Mm-hmm. They mean something. There's something they're trying to communicate to you, but the words are failing, mm-hmm, right? It's the same reason why we don't, when we watch TV, watch American TV, they don't bother censoring out curse words in Spanish or any other language. If you're watching a show and there happens to be a character who speaks another language, they can say whatever they want. Mm-hmm. They won't bleep it out. They won't cut it out. And it's because of that. It's because we have no context. Mm-hmm. Within which to understand what they're trying to tell us. So, I think that the problem is that we lose sight of intention when we act like the words are the problem. So when we try to ban a word, try to stop the use of a word, the R word, quote unquote, the R word, or quote unquote, the N word. I don't use those phrases because they feel juvenile to me. You know, we try to ban those words and we act like we're solving a problem. We're not really. You know, this racist jerk who's saying these things is just going to say it a different way if you figure out some way to prevent them from saying it the way they want it to. So the intention is all that matters, really.
Could you? So you're making the claim that essentially people become. I don't think you're saying, and I could see maybe people are interpreting you as saying this, but that it's not that you're saying words are irrelevant or that they don't matter.
No.
You're saying that they become less important if they're obfuscating the ability to analyze and examine intentions that people are having or their ideas behind those things.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, it's basically just saying, you know, I'm a big fan of George Carlin, and growing up, he was a big influence on the way that I think about these things. And he talked about words a lot. It was one of his hobby horses, right? And, you know, he had this whole thing talking about like, there's no such thing as bad words. You know, you have bad intentions, you have bad ideas, but you don't have bad words. Like what, you know, if I scribbled down the worst word you can think of on a piece of paper and folded it up and just left it on a table, what happens? Nothing. Someone needs to read it and process it and then get upset by it for something to happen, right? And to me, that means that it's about what the word is meant to communicate. So, you know, it's about the focus on the wrong thing. It's kind of like killing the messenger. I think I make that same analogy. We're killing the messenger, but we're leaving the message completely unscathed. So there's just going to be another messenger tomorrow with the declaration of war, you know?
Yeah.
And
there's a sort of type of this kind of, there's a lot of revisionist history, and we do this with words and with labels, you know, but then we do it with other things as well, right? And especially more, you know, past 5 years, we've been, you're either trying to erase history or we're trying to completely retell it or erase memories of it or whatever, at least the parts that some people don't like. You have this with other things too, like the word queer. I mean, to be queer was to be just kind of odd, right? You're just kind of, you know, the eccentric odd.
yeah,
There was
queer.
nothing anywhere remotely close to being slanderous. I think the word gay was, again, something that was used to talk about some type of euphoria or elation or very happy. There's a handful of words, but there's things like that, and that's a kind of an evolution of language. And so how do you know, the argument people will make is, well, if it's wrong now, it's always been wrong. And stop making excuses for people 100 years ago. Like they're a bunch of fucking racists and assholes 100 years ago. We still got them now. That wasn't right then. It's definitely not right now. And, you know, and then they want to make certain changes or whatever. But I mean, how do you feel in terms of how words were used 100 years ago, 500 years ago, 50 years ago, as opposed to now?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of what I think are the benefits of the way that I'm using or approaching this sort of stuff, right? I can watch a movie from the 1930s and I'll hear language that, you know, signals something to me, but I don't need to become invested in it so much that I want to erase it from this earth. I can just understand it in its context. Yeah, this was considered acceptable by at least, you know, this many people for it to have been created.
But if you're watching it and you're allowing that to continue, then you're complicit with that, right? That's the argument.
Yeah, I guess that's a slippery slope, right? Because what else are we watching and consuming and, you know, letting out into the ether that we're also complicit in? You know, I mean, one Quentin Tarantino movie should be the end of cinema as we know it. just simply from the violence. I mean,
right.
It's weird because nobody talks about that, but I think if anything, I think it's funny because there's an inverse there, right? Our movies are almost certainly more violent now than they have ever been.
Oh yeah.
right? Probably, one John Wick movie is 10 times more violent than every movie that has ever come before it combined, probably, right? But nobody bats an eye. Nobody cares about that, and I think it's a framing issue. It's something that people have just decided this is a good way to show my allegiance to social justice, which is a good thing. Social justice is something we want, right? But there's this strain of it, and there's this approach towards it that becomes very strange and nonsensical and cult-like in many respects. And yeah, we're not being consistent because it doesn't make any sense. To bring George Carlin back in, he said, he pointed out a bunch of ridiculous things, and he says, and the reason there are all these inconsistencies is because it's bullshit. We just all made it up. We made it all up. We just decided this. So it's kind of that. We're just deciding, hey, did you know John Wayne was racist? It's amazing.
Right.
Like, can you believe it? Right. Yeah, I can believe that a dude born 2 centuries ago, I'm pretty sure he was born in the 1800s. Right. I'm pretty sure he's going to hold views that I would consider insane, And
it makes a bigger point of like the thing that I always try and tell people, and it's hard sometimes for people to, I think, kind of get at this, is we're all in process, right? What we're doing now, 50 years from now, is going to be seen as whatever, fill in the blank, right? Oh my God, can you believe that we thought this way or did this way?
We hope.
Right.
We hope, because that would indicate progress.
Right. So what people did in 1970, which is, 50 years ago now, it's going to, if you go back and watch some of the films from the 80s, right? Yeah. And you're like, God, like this, there's definitely some sexist, misogynistic kinds of stuff going on, even in the 80s. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't in the 90s. It wasn't like,
you don't even have to go back that far.
Right. I mean,
you can go in this century.
Yeah. This is the argument that, God, what's his name? Steve Carell, right? Where people are like, hey, do an Office reboot, do another season. And he, that stuff was in the early 2000s. Right. And he's just like, yeah, we couldn't get away with that now.
No,
we just couldn't do that. And like, if you go back and like, it's a strange thing for me because people will watch on Netflix, The Office like 8 times, all like 25 seasons or however many it is. Right. And they'll be like, laughing and loving it. And I think most of it's just nostalgia and, whatever. But I'm like, if I sit there and watch like a couple episodes, I'm like, oh my goodness, if this show was made today, this episode's from 2008. I mean, oh my goodness, everyone would be canceled on this show. Everyone would just be completely like, you can't say this, you can't say that. Okay, fine, whatever. Things evolve and change. I'm not going to make a value judgment on that. But does that mean that we cancel The Office and we don't watch it anymore?
Yeah, that's bizarre.
Probably not. That's weird. And that's something that you're right is like very close to us. That didn't happen 30 years ago. It happened 10, 15 years ago.
Right.
And so I don't understand, people wanting to, what was the song? It's cold outside or whatever.
Oh yeah, baby, it's cold outside.
Yeah. It's like, this song came out in the 30s, the 40s. Like,
right. But it's even funnier because it seems to be a complete misunderstanding. The controversy with that song. Right, if I remember right, the problem with the song is that this guy is being overly pushy. She's saying no, and he's not listening. She's trying to make excuses to get out, but he keeps making excuses to keep her there.
Right.
And I don't have a stake in this. I don't care about that song.
Right. I don't either. It was a weird thing when it came out. It's like, wow, people are really digging up stuff to find.
And I think that it's recreational at this point for many of these things. But what's funny is that I read something about it saying that that's actually a complete misinterpretation, and that what's actually going on is the woman wants to stay, but she has to put up this ruse of, no, I really must be going because it's because of misogyny, right? It's because of I can't be seen as the kind of woman who wanted to stay here. So we need to come up with a really good story to explain why I ended up staying the night with you. And so it's funny because everything gets turned on its head. People want to cancel it because it sounds misogynistic because they think the dude's being pushy. But the song itself is actually a commentary on misogyny in that way. I'm not sure how accurate that is. I can't really say, but I always find it interesting when there's another perspective to throw in that converts the outrage into something completely ludicrous. It just, it, for me anyway, it makes me hesitate. I'm going to hold on. I'm going to think about this for a moment before I explode. I'm a very anti-hot take guy. I'm a big fan of the cold take. I want it ice cold.
Cold take. I like that.
I want, put it in the freezer for 6 weeks and then
let it marinate.
Yeah. Like, I think hot takes are overrated. They get people into a lot of trouble. It's just, we need to think about what we're doing here. So there's a sense in which social media changed from when I started using it. So initially I started using it as just this, this is interesting. There's just people out there and I can just spit out my thoughts and just say crazy stuff to be funny or outrageous stuff to be funny, or I can, communicate with all these people and just kind of put this stuff out there. And I was doing stuff like that. And other people were doing it too. And I think we've noticed it on Twitter. Comedians are not really doing comedy on Twitter anymore.
No.
It used to be this thing where, they can try out some stupid bit that maybe wouldn't work on stage, but they drop it on their Twitter. And you don't get that now because social media now.
That's incriminating for a comedian.
It's a kind of digital resume.
Yeah.
That you can't update. You can't erase. If someone's got a screenshot, so you can delete your tweets, but someone's got you. And they're going to bring that up the next time you're up for a promotion or something. Yeah, 20 years, 10 years, it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so, that makes people more careful. But oddly enough, it makes some people less careful. I guess the ones who are comfortable and think that they're running the show are totally fine making these bizarre pronouncements without thinking it through. I just think, why would you put more bad ideas out there? There are already so many we have to deal with.
So you're anti-revisionist history.
Yeah. Anytime I've gotten dumped, I didn't do that thing where I go into my Facebook and delete all.
You delete all the pictures.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I didn't go back there, and there was a relationship I was in for 10 years, and I did not go back and erase 10 years of my life because
you're glorifying it though, right? Like if you leave it up there, you're glorifying it. You're
accepting
memorializing it.
Not at all. I'm accepting that it happened. I'm accepting, like this was a huge chunk of my life. This is something that happened to me. I'm not going to deny it, and I gain nothing from acting like it didn't happen. I don't go back and look at those photos. There's nothing there for me to enjoy necessarily. But if they pop up, it was a kind of two-pronged thing. I didn't want to erase this huge chunk of my life and pretend it didn't happen just because it didn't work out. But there's also the thing of, if an image pops up, your time machine or whatever, they say, 7 years ago, check out this photo. And, someone's in there that you'd rather not see. You get that pang, right? But that pang can be productive.
Yeah.
You can use it and, curl up into a ball in your bed and call out sick for work and be miserable. Or you can say, you can look at it and say, that was a part of my life that happened. It's over. Didn't end well. That sucks, but I'm okay. I'm alive and I'm moving forward. Everything's fine. It's a way I used it as a way to help me get over the situation and also to reinforce this idea of, you don't need to revise your history to become better now. We are better than we were in 1930. So our culture is going to reflect that. And there are things that we're doing now that, as you mentioned, in 50 years are going to be considered barbaric to people. And that's okay too. We're just doing our best. All we can do is remain open and move forward with the intention of getting better and doing better.
Well, I think in your example too, I mean, if you dated someone for 10 years, I mean, that's that's not, 10 weeks, right? That's
Yeah.
that's a long time. The thing I tell clients and some of my friends too is like, you always remember the ending, but it doesn't mean like the whole time it was horrible. Like you can still have good moments that you really enjoyed. Like you don't have to like, because it ended terribly or someone really hurt you. I mean, maybe not immediately, but I don't think you have to like completely, literally erase, everything that happened. So in your example of like, oh, 7 years ago, it's like, oh yeah, like, you know, this person sucks and didn't work out, but you know what? That was a fun time. And in that moment, it was a really fun time. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. Like, what's wrong with that? Like, I mean, it happened. It's part of your life. And I think we can kind of do that as a society too, where, you know, it's a little bit different, I think, as a society because, signs, symbols, they do have a little bit more, I think they're important. They're important for tradition and culture, and they can have a little bit more power in some ways. It's power we give to it, but I think they can. But
sure, and it's kind of an agreement, right? Like it's not just one person deciding what the Confederate flag means.
Right.
There are a bunch of people deciding what it means, and there's kind of an agreement about it, and that's what causes some issues when other people decide, no, this is for me. This means this.
Right.
And
yeah.
they're right. Maybe it does, but.
Well, this was the whole thing with like, the statues and, changing the names of, buildings and schools and I guess military bases. And it's like, yes, I mean, I've heard both sides of this.
Right.
But it's one of those things where, I don't think you should have to, right. I don't think you want to glorify it or memorialize quote unquote traitors. But at the same time, though, I don't think we have to ignore like that ever happened.
Yeah, right.
And taking it down doesn't take down that it happened. And if you're trying to always sanitize your history, you're just not going to grow. You're not going to learn. Right. And you should know.
If anything, it backfires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because not only, are you, I mean, I think it's with the statues and sort of that sort of stuff. I don't care about statues. If somebody wants to take a statue down, fine. I don't recommend or condone that they do it in the middle of the night with just a bunch of rope without, anybody else knowing about it and that sort of thing. That's not going to help. But I don't have any particular attachment to that sort of thing, right? But
some people do, though. Some people do have.
Yeah, and some people
sides,
do.
Actually,
yeah, some people do, and that's understandable. I get that. And I've heard the argument of, we're gonna forget history if we take these statues down, and I don't know if that's the strongest argument. We can put them in a museum or something, or figure out some other way. We don't necessarily have to have it in the town square. But I think the bigger problem is less that and more you are giving it an air when you topple it down and try to bury it and try to make it go away and not, there are going to be people who discover it or who are contrarian and they want to seek it out and they say, I actually like Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee is my hero now, you know, and you try to tear a statue down and you try to occult this history about the great Robert E. Lee, and it turns into a fucking, it turns into this bizarre, subreddit somewhere. Yeah. That and it's underground. You don't see it because it's not allowed. So it becomes a secret society of Robert E. Lee assholes, and then we have to deal with them later when they're fully formed. Like I'd rather. If it were just me, my personal thing, I understand people feel differently and I understand why. If you grew up in the South and maybe like your parents or your grandparents dealt with serious racism, that becomes a symbol of that to you. I completely understand that. But my personal approach would be, see this guy? He sucks. And I'll tell you why. If I'm, let's say, I have a kid and I'm walking through the town square and he goes, who is this dude? Why are we making a statue for this guy?
Yeah.
Like, well, we didn't make a statue. They made a statue, and here's why they made a statue.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what this guy did, and here's what it means.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, it can definitely be
fun.
way more instructive, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think you're right about there's a social psych term called psychological reactants, right? It's where it's like as soon as you start to highlight and give something oxygen, then all of a sudden that's going to be my thing now. And I think that happens, I mean, daily on Twitter, weekly in our society. That's just always what happens. And it's like, oh, right, now everyone cares about this, and they didn't 2 minutes ago, but now it's like their big thing and their big project and all that. So
right,
but okay, so anti-revisionist history, in terms of the words, and then maybe a little bit outside of that.
Yeah.
Is there, and I'm with you on that, actually. I can see both sides for sure, and I can hear both arguments for certain things. I think more personally, you and I probably agree on this. And so my shift is always how to communicate and reach other people in ways where they can hear it.
Right. Totally.
And
I think that's important.
That's challenging. That can be challenging.
It's definitely challenging. Yeah.
Because people become very zealous about certain things. And I get it.
And I think that's important. I think it's important to point out that you understand. I do understand. I get where people are coming from, and I get how people feel. Mm-hmm. But in the interest of moving forward, in the interest of progress, right, which is my thing, right. I want to make the world better. I want the world to be better. I want it to be better than it was yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. And I want to push forward. And one of the fundamental things that I see as being required for that is to engage more fully with reality, right? Erasing the past, erasing 10 years of photos on Facebook does not make your relationship not happen. It does not mean it didn't happen. It doesn't make it go away. It just, you just erased a lot of memories. You have to contextualize those memories, put them in the right place, think about them the right way. And now you're a healthier person because you didn't just put something in the closet. You dealt with it and you let it go.
I'll say that I totally agree with that, and I think the contextual piece is important. I'll tell you, so I read lots of philosophy. I really enjoy that stuff, and I'll tell you on both ends, my goal. I kind of have this joke with people that know me. It's when I'm older, I'll do language, but not now. When I was in grad school, I remember learning about how language works and functions in the brain, and remember thinking just how complex it was. Like it was just really complex. Like I knew the basic, essentials, Broca area, Wernicke's area is how it functions, all that. But in terms of more specific than that, I was like, oh man, that is a whole world that is really complicated, really messy. I'll pass. And then when I started, when I read lots of philosophy, I have seen this kind of branch of philosophy where people are very, have spilled a lot of ink about language. So if you read Lacan, if you read Wittgenstein, if you read the deconstructionalist, Derrida, Foucault, if you read, there's Chomsky, there's a bunch of people that have written a lot about language, and it's a whole world, it's a whole labyrinth, and everyone has their own kind of angle. And it's something that, again, I've read a little bit of it, and I'm just like, oh man, I need a couple years to just really dive into that stuff. Again, because it's just somewhat intimidating. So, but I think it's important, but I think some people within philosophy, and then commentators or critics, they just kind of obsess over it, and it just becomes this kind of very parochial kind of way of, or fascination about this stuff. And it's okay, it's important, but it's not, I'm going to put all of the weight onto everything. And so even for intellectuals, they fight about this stuff all the time. And so I don't know if you've read any of this
Sure,
stuff.
yeah, it's complicated.
But
Not a lot, no. My approach is really just is pragmatic. It's just me reasoning my way through this. It's just, it's that little kid energy of just, wait, how does this work? Why isn't this working? Why doesn't this make any sense? I'm trying to put these blocks together and it's not working. What's going on here? Why is this not the thing? I'm really just applying that. It's really just like, okay, explain this to me like I'm 5 years old. Why is this a problem? And that usually breaks down right there. It usually breaks down. It's usually, I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. That seems like you're just deciding to have it be a problem when it's not really. There's so much to worry about already.
No, I'm with you.
Energy. Yeah.
Okay, so let's hit this next point. Maybe a little bit of some autobiographical stuff will be helpful for listeners.
Sure.
So I'll let you go first. You can share as much as you want or as less as you want. So I'll just set it up for us. So both of us are Hispanic, Latin. I guess you are more than I am. So at least maybe to some people. But and so I think we have different backgrounds there. So as much as you want, as much as you feel comfortable with, kind of maybe just share a little bit of your background from that angle.
Yeah. Hispanic is what I understood to be the proper term growing up, at least. I didn't really use Latino, but
Do you use it now?
I'm not sure if I qualify. It's one of those things. I don't really pay attention to it too much. But sometimes I see myself getting lumped in there. But Hispanic is what I grew up saying, as the proper term. But really, I would just say, oh, I'm Spanish. And that's what everybody would say about me. So you're Spanish. And Spanish meant, Puerto Rican, Dominican, Salvadorian. Doesn't matter. You're Spanish. Right. So these are the Spanish kids. So I'm Dominican. I was born here, but both my parents come from the Dominican Republic. So I'm a first generation Dominican American. And I grew up in New York or in and around New York City. It's a cultural thing. Being Dominican is something that it is important to me in the sense of, I love I love my family. I love my culture. I love the food. I love the music, some of it. And it's, I don't use the word proud because there's a whole other can of worms there that I find odd. But it's wonderful. I love it. And there's that, but in my day-to-day life, I don't really think of myself that way. So this, my ethnic identity, the fact that I'm brown doesn't really come into play. I just, when I look in the mirror, I just see Angel. I see myself. And when I look at other people, I just see them, like I see Xavier. I'm not really thinking about the fact that, where you come from is this versus that. That's not something that plays into the way I view people or the way I interact or the way I view myself. But those are the pedigree items.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you still living up in and around New York, or?
Yeah, I'm in Queens right now.
Okay. So on my end, I may have mentioned this in other podcasts, or I've mentioned it maybe in passing. So this is maybe a nice point to mention here. So yeah, like you, my eggs hatched here. So I'm an American citizen. I was born here. And so my dad came to the United States illegally in 1980, so 40 years ago. And he came here as an adolescent when he, and from El Salvador in Central America because of a pretty ugly civil war. So El Salvador had a civil war from 1978 to 91, 2. something around there. So almost 14 years. So in the beginning, it was pretty, I mean, truly barbaric. And so, my dad came here because he was getting death threats in school, going to kill you and your whole family if you don't join a side. And he had to pick. There was no neutrality. It's a terribly small country. El Salvador is the size of Massachusetts. It's third world poor. Definitely was then, more or less. It still is now. Very poor, very, very poor, extreme poverty. And that's where my dad didn't come from the city. He came from the countryside. So it was just abject poverty. My dad had no toys when he was growing up. He didn't, barely got through by school and had to do hard physical labor in the fields and all that stuff. So he came here, by foot, swam, train, bus, car, across the border. And, probably by standards and definitions then, and probably still today, he's essentially a refugee more than a illegal immigrant. But either way, he didn't have papers here for a while, and he went to high school here, and met my mom. My mom is a white girl, and they dated, they got married, they had me. My dad became a U.S. Permanent resident, and then he became a U.S. citizen, I think, in the early 90s, and has been since. So that's kind of my dad, and then my mom. As I said, she's a white woman. She's from the area, so my mom is kind of from the countryside. She's lived in the country of Virginia and out in the sticks. She's lived in she has another part of her story of living in pretty urban areas in certain parts of here in Maryland, around DC. And then as an adult, she's lived in different places around the United States. So, so that's kind of how I am in terms of my identification. So technically I'm multi-ethnic. That I have, Hispanics are considered an ethnicity, and that they're a conglomerate of a lot of different types of cultures and groups, as opposed to a race. And so my race is white in that way, in terms of all the general ways in which we know terms. And so growing up, people sometimes would ask me, do you feel like you have to pick one? Right? Are you more Hispanic? Are you more white? And I just never really saw it that way. I kind of similar to you, man. It was just, I just am myself. When I look at the mirror, I see me. I do think about it though, in terms of, I think culturally it comes out. So, and I don't necessarily try to subscribe, well, that's the white side or that's the Hispanic side. Although I will play with that sometimes, if I'm late, I'll say that's the Hispanic side. If I'm on time, I'll say it's the white side. Whatever the generalized, stereotypes are, but I don't really mean it. But because I think people are people, right? But that said, there is a difference though. And I think this does come out in terms of, definitely in terms of family and definitely in terms of worldview or perspective. So typically many white Americans, what the stereotype is that they're very individualistic culture. And the stereotype with Hispanics is that they are very collective, right? It's all about the family, the community, grandma and your aunt, your uncle, they all raise you and they all have equality in terms of how they discipline you or reward you. And with white folks, it's less of that sometimes. And so growing up, I kind of had my feet in both worlds. So there's this weird blend where I'm very individualistic and at the same time, very collective. And so it's a strange thing that makes sense to me, but for most people, they can't really understand that.
Right.
And that's not to say that Hispanics don't have individualism, and that's not to say that white folks don't have some collectivism.
Sure. You're a day walker.
Yeah, exactly. I wonder though, just a little bit about terms, and I think I've said this before. I kind of get kind of fatigued with overemphasis on terms, but for a lot of people, so people have asked me this: do you prefer Hispanic, Latino, Spanish? I don't really give a shit. Like, I really don't. I don't sit around thinking about that. I don't worry about that. It doesn't bother me. I really don't care.
Yeah.
I do think that there is some, if you want to parse it out, there's probably some distinctions. I mean, usually Spanish represents folks from Spain.
Right.
Hispanic represents usually people that have the Spanish language probably as their central locus. And then Latin is a broader term used for kind of Latin America. And Latin America will include people that are quote unquote Spanish and that aren't. So, for example, Brazil is not Spanish. They're Portuguese, and there's colonization and all that stuff. They speak a different language. They have different culture. But they are part of South America, and they are part of Latin culture. So I see Latin as a broad umbrella term, and then I see Hispanic as an even kind of smaller under that, and then Spanish is a little bit more specific. But most people use them as synonymous terms, which is fine. I don't care. I don't know. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, I always tried to make sense of it, and then I thought I had, and then I did the 2020 census, and they asked me, you know, what's my ethnicity, and I was like, well, I saw Hispanic, so I checked that, and then they asked me my race, and I'm like, well, didn't I just fucking answer that? I don't know. So I didn't know what to put. It's just confusing. I growing up, it was just, you know, Hispanic was someone corrected me at some point saying, you're Hispanic. It's not Spanish. You're Hispanic because you're not from Spain. Thought, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess Hispanic is what you're supposed to say. So that's what I went around saying. But yeah, you know, colloquially, it'd be, oh, you're Hispanic. And Latino was something that it's funny because it may not have been the first time I heard it, but the first time I remember hearing that was Mario Lopez on Saved by the Bell. You know, when he would do his, like, when it was his turn to do the, you know, public service announcement type thing where he's sitting on the teacher's desk and he's talking to the camera at the end of an episode of Saved by the Bell or whatever. And he would say Latino. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? I don't know. And then I knew he was, I believe he's Mexican. So I was like, oh, I guess that means like Central South American people are Latino or something. I don't know. I mean, the island that the Dominican Republic is on is called Hispaniola. Right. You know, it's the Dominican Republic and Haiti together is Hispaniola. Hispanic, Hispaniola. I don't know. I never put much stock into it because it didn't make sense to me anyway. It didn't really play a big part of my identity after middle school. I don't know if you want to get into that.
Well, we can get into a little bit. I was going to add another term there about that also gets people a little bit charged up is Chicanos, right? Which is another, again, it's I don't want to say supplemental because that makes it seem that group of people is supplemental. It's another subgroup within a larger group. So Chicanos, is how I understand it, is that these are folks that have a Hispanic history and tradition, but there's just a longer line of generational dispensations, I guess you could say. So there's like third, fourth generation Mexicans that live in Texas or Arizona or California, where they are, I guess you could say, more integrated or assimilated with America, like the United States, but it's like there's like a kind of subculture within like the whole Tex-Mex kind of thing, right? Like
Right.
Texans, like Hispanic Texans, like they have a very particular, it's a subset of how they do things. And I think in Southern California, New Mexico, Arizona, which is different than first generation or immigrants from other places in the rest of the country. So,
and they're majority Mexican.
Majority Mexican.
Speaking.
Majority Mexican. I think they put Puerto Ricans in there, but I could be wrong on that. But it's predominantly Mexican though. But I could be wrong on that.
Well, sure, there's plenty of everything, I'm sure, but like there are regional populations we just understand. Oh, Miami, that's Cubans.
That's Little
and
Havana.
New York is Dominicans and Puerto Ricans. And we understand that Texas, Arizona, California, especially, that's Mexican.
Yeah. So basically, where there's certain parts of the country will have different pockets of different folks from different parts of Latin America. And so then they create organically over time a kind of subset or a subculture. Yeah. So, and I think at that point it kind of takes a life of its own, if you will. Yeah. And so then it becomes, a little bit more specific.
Yeah. New Yorican is another one.
Yeah.
So that is a subset of.
That is definitely a subset. Is a whole language you guys got up there in New York. I mean, it's wild. Yeah. Yeah. Which is also interesting too, because Puerto Ricans are American citizens.
Yeah.
Right. They're Americans. I mean, they're not, right. But they're Americans, but they're just a lot of things, right? Because they're part of the Latin community. But they're also, islanders, right? So that's also different. That's a different perspective, but because of their territory, they're American citizens. So they have a different dynamic as well. But culturally, I think predominantly culturally, they are Hispanic. But so that becomes a little tricky too.
Yeah, it's all tricky depending on the definitions, and then they seem to change. So then, I thought I had it down, but it's apparently not.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the one way I want to, I think, kind of set it up, and then we can branch off into other things, probably more current. And I definitely do want to talk about Hispanics in the United States and a little bit politically too, because I think that's really fascinating. Mm-hmm. So I've tried to explain this to people, and again, maybe I'm not the best person to do it, but I don't want to be the interpreter or something for Hispanics, or that I'm speaking for all Hispanics. I'm not. I mean, I'm only a half breed, so I'm a mutt. So but when I've tried to explain this to white folks or even black folks, it's very hard for people to understand this. And it just basically you're explaining the nuance of ethnicity. So you can, help me along here and make sure I don't put my foot in my mouth and correct me and all that. But so basically I think it's important, and in fact, to make a distinction here of at bottom, we're the Americas, legitimately. So you have North America, and Caribbean, Central America fit under that, and you have South America, and they're all American, right? They're all the Americas. And so when you look at indigenous folks, all up and down the Western Hemisphere, they're all just Americans, right? They're the true Americans, if you want, the pure Americans. And so there is a kind of, I think, kind of connectedness there, that even though there's a lot of difference, there is some connectedness. So at bottom, I always see it that way. I kind of conceptualize the whole hemisphere as like the Americas. That's how I think about it sometimes. I've been up and down the Western Hemisphere a lot. I've been to South America, Caribbean, Central America, Mexico, Canada, and all over the US. And there's just something about it that makes it the Americas to me. That's how I see it. But there is a distinction between I'll say in terms of trying to make distinctions for people that aren't aware of it, there's a distinction between Spain, the Caribbean, Mexico, Central America, South America. Would you agree with that?
There's a distinction.
Yes. So people that are from Peru, just throwing it out there, are different than Mexicans. They're all Hispanic, but they're fundamentally different. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm taking it kind of by regions. So you have Mexico it's huge, and it's kind of got its own culture to it. I mean, each country has its own culture, but there's a very distinct culture in Mexico. Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. That's kind of in terms of, if you want, clusters, if you will. There are differences, and so it's funny. I'll pull you into this and see we'll see how you really feel about this. You'll see how much you really care about this. So my daughter is 13, and she's got a bunch of mixtures of races and ethnicities. So she was just like, she tries to understand this sometimes, because a lot of her friends are, multi-ethnic. I mean, everybody's got, a little bit of everything now, directly. And she was like, so what about people in the Caribbean? I said, yeah, what about them? She goes, well, is all of the Caribbean Latin? I said, ooh, I don't know about that. And she goes, yeah, I don't either. And I said, well, I think it depends on if you understand like the culture of things. She goes, right. She's like, so like Puerto Ricans and Dominicans and Cubans, they're Spanish. I was like, yeah. She's like, but Jamaicans aren't Spanish. They're not Spanish. So they're not Latin, right? And I was like, well, they're Caribbean. And she goes, yeah, but they're not Latin. I was like, I don't know. I never really thought about it that way. She's like, well, what about people from Trinidad and Tobago, Bermuda, Barbados? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a mess.
And it's like, yeah. And so the Caribbean is a really interesting place, because I think you have a lot of different cultures there. I think the unifying thing about the Caribbean is the kind of islander kind of vibe. Like there's that kind of subculture that kind of translates across. But if you're looking even just past, countries or states, if you will, I think they are different, right? I would not say the Caribbean is all Hispanic or all Latin. How do you see it?
No, definitely. These divisions don't make sense in my head, so I usually just avoid them. I know a lot of people who are Caribbean. One of my good friends is from Trinidad, and she also kind of says, I'm Indian, because it's Trinidad, so there's all this mixture there.
West Indies, right? Isn't that
so there's all this mixture there, right? And it's, but she's also Caribbean. She's also an islander. We get each other culturally because of certain things, but we also completely don't get each other because of other things, like Diwali and all that. Meanwhile, for us, in Dominican Republic, there's Carnival, and there's, strange things like that. In Cuba, there's Santeria, and, it's like, there's a bunch of stuff, and it's all mixed up. And I think those terms are useful and interesting to a point, but, like take New York, for example, right? There's a Brooklyn accent. There's a Bronx accent. There's a Manhattan accent. There's even like an upper Manhattan accent versus a lower Manhattan accent, right? There's a Staten Island accent. This is the same city. These are different boroughs within the same city. And then, you even have different cultural pockets that aren't even, like, for example, where I live in Astoria, Queens, there's a huge Greek population, right? So there's a lot of Greek food. There's a lot of that sort of vibe going on. But there's also a Queens vibe. And then there's also an Astoria vibe, right? And there's this kind of like nesting doll phenomenon going on. And I find that fascinating and beautiful and wonderful. And I think that there are times where when we use these more all-encompassing, broader terms, we lose a lot of that stuff. And so I'm wary of using it unless it's totally necessary. So, and again, I don't think too much in these terms. I have friends who are from all over the place, and I see them as their own kind of island. So my friend from Trinidad, she's one person from Trinidad, but I know other people from Trinidad, they're different.
Yeah.
I know Jamaican people, and they're different, and I know more, other Dominican people. It's I don't know. It just, I guess my brain just kind of looks at it for 2 seconds and says, this is really messy, and just dismisses and just goes, I don't want to deal with that. let me just remember the person's name and just refer to them this way.
Well, this may be a slight point of, I don't say difference, because I agree with you, but maybe a slight point of, I think you might underemphasize it more than I do. I definitely don't overemphasize it, but you might, in terms of our pulse on it. I do think it is somewhat important. Remember, I'm the nationalist, right? So, so, which is interesting, right? Because we're both born here. But like, okay, as a small example, like Haiti and Dominican Republic are literally on the same peninsula. It's the same piece of land, but they're pretty different, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're different.
They speak
in all ways. I mean, language, food, I'm sure music. I'm assuming there's some overlap, but music. I mean, even the topography and the terrain, right? Doesn't like Haiti have more mountains and stuff? And like, I mean, there's just a lot of differences, right? Like, how does? I mean, literally, I haven't been to Dominican Republic, so I can't say, but like, when you get to a certain part of the peninsula, it's just like, well, now you're in Haiti, and it's literally a different place. It's the same piece of land, but it's completely different. I mean, you're a completely different place, which is fascinating to me. I mean, that's an important distinction, don't you think?
Oh, sure. It's more about the labels that they get messy and weird for me.
Okay.
But like I was thinking as you were saying all these things, that one thing that I always wanted to do was take a road trip across the country, from New York to California, but stop at all these different places along the way.
Right.
And part of the appeal for me is for the experience of landing somewhere else to be different than it is when I go by plane. So I've flown to California. I get into a plane, it's JFK, and I fly off, I land at LAX, I get out, palm trees and sunshine, and it's just, I just stepped through a membrane into another reality, kind of. Right. But it would be different to watch the transition, to watch the flow, New Jersey to Pennsylvania to, Ohio to, like, you're crossing these invisible lines that we've just arbitrarily created. And they demarcate something, but not everything. But there are differences. There is a kind of a gradient, like a cultural kind of gradient that is happening, and that we're navigating through, right? And it's kind of like that, like you're 1 foot in the Dominican Republic, you take 2 more steps, and you're in Haiti, and there is a difference. There's something going on there. And it's a vibe. It's the culture. It's the voice of the people, kind of, reverberating everywhere and in their words and deeds. And I find that really beautiful. I find that it is important. I don't mean to say that it isn't. I think it's just that the labels get messy because people try to categorize for other purposes, for voting blocks and things like this. And they lump these people together that have, for the purposes of what they're looking for, they have things in common. But apart from that, they have very little in common. Cubans are very different from Mexicans.
Right. Well, this is my point. Right.
Yeah, so
Very
Cuban
different.
Americans and Mexican Americans are very different from each other, but they're lumped together in a voting block. We're trying to get the Hispanic vote or the Latin vote.
Right.
And that leads to confusion. That leads to weird, anomalies in the way we categorize people and what we expect from them and all of that.
Yeah, no, I right. And you're saying exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm less hung up about the labels too. I mean, kind of like how we started this part of the conversation. You can call me Latin, Hispanic. I don't give a shit. I really don't care. It doesn't make a difference to me.
Yeah.
I do think what's important is understanding the regional differences within a very big group that we call Hispanics. I think that's really important.
Definitely.
Before I get into that, I'll just tell you a little bit. So I've driven across the country a couple of times. I've driven to Montana, central Montana from here in Maryland, and then back, different ways each time. And then I drove when I was younger with my uncle. We went from Maryland to Phoenix. So I've literally driven the top part, the middle part, and then the the southern part of the country. It's really cool. I mean, I encourage people to do it. It takes you 3 days, but if you're going aggressive, but there is a shift. There's a shift. Like when you're leaving out of the East Coast, at least down here from Maryland, it starts to get different, kind of like, I'll just use it where I last did recently, where kind of like Western Ohio of sorts. So like Pennsylvania, Western Maryland, West Virginia, Eastern Ohio is all sort of similar, right? It's the kind of coal country, blue collar, farms. Yeah, it's very similar. And then once you get into like Western Ohio, and then you're Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, you're very Midwest and you feel it. But there's this, I remember when we were driving it, we drove all the way up to Fargo, right, in Minnesota. North Dakota, it's on the line.
I was about to correct you there.
Yeah. Sorry, it's right on the line because you drive through Minnesota. You drive all the way through go through Minneapolis and drive all the way up. And Minnesota is a cool place. It's I liked Minnesota. It was cool. I probably couldn't live there because of their brutal winters, but it was a really nice place.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it.
And you get to Fargo, and it's a very interesting place as well. And then like once you're driving across North Dakota, it feels distinctly different. Like it feels different than, you can drive all the way up and down the East Coast, and there's difference, right? There's a difference between Maine and South Carolina, but it's all the East Coast. I don't know how to explain that, but it's similar in some ways. That's a really weird way to say that. I've never said that. Like,
how
one
much
is
of
the
that
South and one is the very North.
Yeah. How much of that do you think is in your head? Like, how much of that is it you grafting your own kind of?
I think there's some of that
perceptions there,
but I think it's more of like just really it's exactly what you were saying in the beginning of. It is kind of the topography and the terrain. Like it just you feel in the space, like in like when you're driving or you get out, or the climate or the temperature, it just is distinctly different.
Right.
And then once you get to like Western, North Dakota, Western South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, like you just Colorado, like it feels very different. You feel, at least from where I was coming from, I was like, oh, I'm very far from home now. You're in Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana. It's like, 12 hours, we'll be back home. It doesn't feel far, right? But, and I think probably like Kansas City, kind of getting from like going to St. Louis to Kansas City. And then you're like, whoa, like I'm on, it's that border of Missouri and Kansas. You're like, I feel like I'm in a different part of it. It just, again, it's just different climate, different terrain. Cities look different of sorts. So I don't know. It does feel that way. So kind of mapping that onto kind of with Latin America, I think that's also kind of true too, right? I don't know. Have you traveled in Latin America? I mean, I'm assuming you've been in Dominican Republic, yeah?
Yeah, I've been to Dominican Republic, I've been to Cuba, and I've been to El Salvador actually a couple of times. And yeah, I know what you mean.
Right?
I know what you mean. And I mean, you know, I flew to all those places, so I didn't get that thing that I was talking about, right? Which is what you're pointing out. Like you're, you know, it's kind of like nobody does this anymore, really, but it's kind of like, you know, you're listening to the radio and you're slowly passing, you know, you're passing through one of those border lines, and suddenly the station changes to something else. It's a totally different type of music.
Right.
I used to do a lot of driving through Pennsylvania, and that sort of thing happens. You know, you're listening to some station and it just morphs, and suddenly you realize, oh, and then there's something kind of informing this this kind of transition. There's something showing you. There's a marker there for you, and then, you know, you also, Pennsylvania. I mean, you don't have to go very far from where I am now to start seeing, you know, not even just Trump signs, but, you know, Jesus saves and all that stuff. Right. You know, there's just a farmland, and on the side of a barn, there's just, you know, for the real truth, call, you know, 1-800 Jesus or whatever. And
my favorites are always the very zealous and sometimes explicit, like, you know, very pro-life kind of billboards.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Those are fascinating.
Very in your face.
It's funny too. There was I took a trip to Atlantic City with my fiance, and we noticed that on the way in, there's one kind of turnpike going in to Atlantic City, you know, the last few miles. And as you're going in, there's all these billboards, and it's all, you know, come visit the Bellagio, come, you know, check out this show, Cirque du Soleil, all this stuff, you know, advertising all the cool stuff you can come check out. And on the way back, when you're leaving, it's all, don't kill yourself, Jesus saves. You know, if you have a gambling addiction problem, it's fascinating. It's, you know, it's another one of those things.
Yeah, it's one of those things in another scale of in Panama City. So I haven't technically been to Panama. I've been to the airport in Panama City as a layover transfer, and I had like a 4-hour layover there going to South America a couple of years ago. And it was interesting because it was like when you're going into you know, like the terminal, when you're going into like South America, right? It looks very different, right? It's very I don't know. It just looks a little run down, a little beaten up. Like it just is not very pleasant. And then I stopped there again on the way back to the United States. That side of the airport, amazing. They got all the nice shops. They got all the nice restaurants. You know, it's really refurbished and nice. And, you know, it's just very interesting. You know, and that's probably a class thing more than anything else. But there is a difference of entering in to, because, you know, Panama City is kind of legitimately the gateway to the, you know, southern part of the rest of the hemisphere. And then say the reverse when you're going back into to either Central America or North America. But yeah, so I mean, I totally agree with you. There's a change that happens. There's a change with kind of like your radio station analogy. Like as you keep stomping, as you keep getting further away from where you're at, you know, people's accents change, people's demeanor changes. There's different customs and cultural things and norms and different types of music. And then I think the terrain and the climate and the geography impacts that. And so I think that that's probably the biggest thing, at least in the United States, that changes when you do that, which is a really cool thing to see. Because what is it? people have said that the United States is kind of like 6 different countries in terms of like how it like subgroups. You know, you have the New England, you have the Deep South, you have like Southwest, Mountain Range, Midwest. Texas is its own thing, I guess. I don't know. And when I was in South America, somebody asked me, like, you know, I'll ask you this: if I want to go to the United States and I want to get the true American experience, where should I visit? What would you say if someone asked you that?
Yeah, I remember you asked Rod this.
Oh, did I ask him this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. And I think he said New York.
But he said, no, what did he say? He said some like Midwest town. He said like, I don't know if he said like Des Moines or St. Louis. He just said some like Midwest town. He's like, that was like true America. And I said New York. I said New York.
Oh, did you?
I said New York.
I mean, I'm from here. I love New York. And there is an emblematic quality to it in that it really is the melting pot idea.
Yeah.
You know, in full force. It's just, you know, you go down 6 blocks, you're in a completely different neighborhood with a completely different, you know, subgroup of immigrants that have, you know, joined together there, and, you know, they've got their restaurants, and even the signs are in that language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you go down to Chinatown, stuff is in Chinese, and not necessarily English. You may not get any English at all.
Right.
Washington Heights, where I grew up, partly, that's, you know, that is the Dominican Republic. There's some Puerto Ricans in there, but it's hardcore Dominicans. Right. They're everywhere. Mm-hmm. They own every business. It's, you know, you hear merengue and bachata everywhere. You know, the taxis are these Lincoln Town cars, the black Lincoln Town cars with Jamaican flags on them.
Right.
It's just fully just taken over. Right. And so there is an aspect there that is kind of the ideal of America, this idea of, you know, people come here, they mix together, and it's this beautiful conglomeration, right? But then you would be missing out on what Pennsylvania is like, or, you know, even, in the Southwest, like, it's a completely different vibe. So there is no one America. There's no one way to experience America. I mean, it really is kind of like every state is a country unto itself, because, you know, if I was trying to think of where to direct someone in South America for them to get the South American experience, the concept itself is kind of silly.
Yeah.
Because, like, well, do you mean Brazil? Do you mean Argentina? Do you mean Colombia?
Right.
Well, you know, those are different places, but you're going to get a completely different experience if you go.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like America's is that way. We're united in this larger sense, but Texas is its own place, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's
its own country.
Yeah. California is its own thing. New York is its own thing. And, you know, New York City is one thing, and then New York State, you know, outside of it is a whole other thing.
Yeah.
The vibe is crazy. You know, you drive just half an hour outside the city, you know, you go to, I went to visit Sleepy Hollow recently. It's a completely different thing. It's just the vibe of it is so different. It reminds me of, you know, those movies from the 80s, those nostalgia kind of movies. It's very hard. I don't know. I don't think there's an answer to that. I think anybody who gives you an answer is giving you the wrong answer. There is no answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I've told people. I'm like, you know, it's really hard to do that because I kind of do it by the kind of regions of, like, you know, America is really kind of like 6 countries at least. You know, I say New York because of what you just described. You're going to get a lot of different things. You're going to get that whole like immigrant melting pot, blah, blah, blah kind of experience. Right. You're not going to get the Midwest experience. You're not going to get the South experience, but, you know, it has all the iconic things. I've told people before, I'm like, look, stay in Philly. Philly is a halfway point between DC, a little bit of Baltimore, New York, and then Philly itself. Philly has a lot of history. So I think the reason I usually pick the East Coast is, and not because I'm from here, but that's where all the history of the country is, right? Like,
you know, the colonies,
the colonies, and then the founding. And so, like, Philly is like, Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell and all that stuff. And then it's, an hour and a half, 2 hour drive to New York, and you can see all that. And then if you want to come down to DC and see all the monuments and all the history in DC, there's, it's 2.5 hour drive. So I kind of tell people that if they're going to visit and they want to visit the United States as like a trip, right, just go to Philly, stay there. There's a lot of historical stuff there, and then you can hit New York and DC.
Right. And then just imagine the culture shock when they come back a second time and they go to LA instead, and they think they had America pegged.
Right. Yeah. Go to Miami or
yeah. Right.
It's just, it is like, 50 different countries in some ways, but so I'll explain this to people. We'll do two things here, because I want to sort of kind of elaborate on this. I think kind of what we're hitting on is what is important is kind of more the regional thing than the actual labels themselves. Right.
Yeah.
So I think your point is a good one about, because that's my read on it too. With folks from the Caribbean, they have, like, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, right? You're probably going to connect more with somebody from Bermuda or Trinidad, maybe a little bit more than someone from Bolivia.
Yeah.
Right. Technically,
sure.
Bolivia and Dominican Republic are Latin America, right? You guys are both Hispanic, but it's so different. It's so different in terms of just kind of the region and the culture. And so in South America, I have family from South America, family from Colombia, and then family from Ecuador. And there's kind of like the Andean nations, right? There's like Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, I guess somewhat a little bit tip of Chile, I guess. Colombia sort of kind of less so. They're at the very, very, very top. And Brazil is kind of, but there's a handful of countries that's like their connection, right? Is the Andes. It's the mountains, like, and it's, that runs through, and that's their kind of connection. So they're going to probably connect, Ecuadorians are probably going to connect more with Bolivians than they would people from Paraguay. Colombians and Venezuelans probably connect a little bit more, probably because they're neighboring countries, but also culturally too. There's some overlap, I would say.
Sure. I guess it depends on what you're focusing on, right? Like Dominicans and Bolivians are going to have some things in common and many things not in common. But there's kind of it really just depends on what you're focusing on. Like what levers are you pulling?
So in terms of the levers, right? So like most of the things that people see as part of a connection is what this generalized concept of culture. So, okay, so let's define that a little bit, I guess. What would you say is encompassing of Hispanic, or whichever synonym you want to use, culture?
From the entire
category. Just like broad umbrella. What is it to be Hispanic in terms of culture?
There are some things. I mean, the Spanish language unites everybody, or most everybody, right?
Yes, in general. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, generally speaking. And
although Dominicans speak some interesting Spanish.
Oh, you
guys speak some interesting Spanish.
It's totally fucked up. We cut the ends of words off. We speak at 1,000,000 miles per minute. We make shit up. We make words up on the fly, and people are just supposed to understand it because it rhymes with the word we're supposed to use. It's like this weird. We're like the Cockneys of
But, I'm probably going to get absolutely, just flogged for saying this, but I find Dominicans and Puerto Ricans have, and lesser extent Cubans, their Spanish is similar. I mean, there is differences obviously with it, but your guys kind of pronunciation and your I mean, obviously there's different words in each part of each country, but there's a certain kind of similar tenor in how you guys speak Spanish and stuff.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
There's differences, but
I think it's like a genre of music. If you're not familiar with it, it all kind of sounds the same to you, but the connoisseurs, they can tell the difference. I can very easily tell the difference between Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, and definitely Cubans. Cubans have this whole other cadence to them. They're slower.
Yeah.
And it's more like mouthy. Like there's more of a
sits somewhere in the throat differently.
Yeah, there's more of a fullness to everything. And Dominicans are super sharp, super fast. It's very just, rapid fire. And and yeah, it's like I have a couple of Cuban uncles. They married into the family. I know a lot of Cuban people. One of my best friends is Cuban, and it's very like there's a kind of like muffled sort of tone to them. And Dominicans, it's nasally, it's sharp, it cuts through, it's super loud, and it's frenetic in its pace. Like it's like impossible to keep up almost. And I speak it, it's just trying to keep up with the slang, and then people being creative with the slang on the fly. There's a lot going on there, making metaphors and allusions and stuff. They're incredibly poetic for the content of what they're usually talking about. They're quite poetic at the same time. There's a lot of trash talk, but with this beautiful level poetry to it.
But that's just it. Like, so even when we make a blanket statement of trying to find the threads that connect Latin countries or Hispanic culture, language in general is a key component of connecting a culture. But for Hispanic culture, language is that we all speak Spanish. And that's not a prerequisite. Even if you don't speak Spanish, I don't think that makes you less Latin, but just for the sake of argument, that means though, that there's the language, there's so many subcategories within the Spanish language, like even island to island, or even, how they speak Spanish in Argentina is much different than how they speak Spanish in Colombia or Venezuela. Like there's just a lot of difference. But language is one of them. What else?
Generally speaking, probably religion. I think it's a safe bet the vast majority of Latin America would identify as Catholic, at least in their cultural identity, at least in their upbringing, even if they're not practicing.
I would agree with that.
So there's that. And then, the music crosses borders. I think everybody loves Juan Luis Guerra. I think everybody loves Mark Anthony.
Of course. Right.
It's something that transcends. There's a lot of that, a lot of the culture, a lot of the food.
I say the music is there. And I would say, like, even there are some, and I think this is just true of any culture, like there's just some places that put out or have more famous or bigger kinds of stars than others, right? So like Puerto Rico or Mexico or they just get push out and really succeed and do very well. But it does like translate, like it does. It works. Like, I mean, it's just for my Colombian family, like, they love Mark Anthony. I mean, it's just, they love the dude, right?
My fiance is Colombian.
And he's Puerto Rican, right?
Yeah, he's Puerto Rican. New York actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, I know people, right, in South America, my family in Central America, like, there's just certain, even people like, of course, Celia Cruz, who was Cuban, right?
Cuban, yeah.
So I would agree. I think the music, but there is some regional things to music too, right? So
Oh, for sure.
in
It's
terms,
actually very clearly delineated. It's like,
yeah,
you know,
like cumbia is from here, merengue is
right.
from here, bachata is from here.
Yeah.
You have kind of I guess mariachis are only from Mexico. I don't know.
That's where I know them from. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not. I could be
And
wrong on that. Salsa is I see salsa as more universal. I know it has origins in the
I
Caribbean.
give it to the Puerto Ricans, the salsa.
Yeah, but there is a type of universality, I think, to that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, well, like for example, Juan Luis Guerra he does bachatas, he does merengue, he does salsa.
Mm-hmm.
He'll write in any style, but he knows who he's referencing, right?
Yeah.
So there are very clear delineations of like, this belongs to these people. But I think the language thing is the uniting thing there, right? It's kind of like pop music here.
Right.
People listen to Taylor Swift from the Atlantic to the Pacific, right? It just works. Everyone speaks English.
Yeah.
And it just kind of works. But nobody would consider someone from Wyoming to be the same kind of person as a Floridian. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think the music and the language are probably the kind of undercurrent for that.
And the religious thing too, because religion is such a big deal for people. I think I just revealed that it's not a big deal for me the way I said that. But the cultural aspects of religion,
yeah,
they definitely transcend and unite in those ways, because everyone can identify with, I think the best way to find these connecting things is to find what comedians talk about.
Yeah, they have a pulse on that for sure. Yeah.
So so whatever they're talking about, if you get a George Lopez, right? For example, I can listen to George Lopez even though I'm pretty sure he's Mexican. Is that right?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's right.
Pretty sure he's Mexican, and he's going there with it, with his approach. But even though my culture is Caribbean, we're from the Caribbean, and we're quite different. I get what he's saying. I feel what he's feeling. His grandma is my grandma. There's enough there for us to connect, right? So I feel like the best barometer for that sort of thing is the sort of jokes that work across those borderlines, across those regions, right? So what is all of, quote unquote, Latin America laughing at?
Right.
Like if there's a joke that everyone will laugh at, no matter what country in Central and South America and the Caribbean you take it to, that is that unifying thing. Yeah. Everyone just gets that, right? Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think that's something that is important, right? Because I think there's something important that is about being, something that connects people across regions, countries, and I think that is the kind of Latin culture thing, right? And I think this isn't specific to Latin culture. I think this is true for Black folk, and this is probably true for some Asians, and this is true for certain Europeans, and it's not unique to Hispanics. But then I think that there's this other layer. So I think what you had said earlier was right. There's like this Russian doll kind of thing, right? Where there's like all of these like kind of interior layers to it, because you can identify broadly as Hispanic, but you can identify even more specifically as part of Latin America, and then maybe more from the Caribbean, and then maybe more from New York, and then maybe more from, there's just so, and then because then when you start pulling it apart, then it's like, yeah, well, just because you're from Dominican Republic, that doesn't mean all of these other things. There is enough variance within even an island, a small island. And then that becomes, I think, sort of sometimes that's where that kind of breaks apart is in terms of class. So in Latin America, class is a much more salient thing, I would say, than race is. I don't think it's to say that race isn't important, but class is different. I think I said this at some point or wrote in a piece. I don't remember, but in Ecuador or Colombia, if you're black, it doesn't matter almost. What matters is, do you have money or status?
Right.
So you could have money and you're black and no one blinks. It's just like, oh, that guy has money. Whereas they're not going to say, oh, he's black, so he must be blah, 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 blah. It's more of the status, how he's dressed, what car he's driving,
Interesting.
how he's carrying himself. And I'm not saying that as a universality thing. I just think more overwhelmingly, it's a class thing. And that also has to determine with like how the makeup of the countries are, right? Much of Central America is terribly poor. Large parts of South America are pretty poor. Mexico's poor. But then, it literally, the city country thing is like 1,000 times what it is here in the United States there. Like it's, do I have my next meal or do I live in a gated community? Like that's the disparity in many Latin American countries.
Yeah.
So almost I would say people have less time. If you're trying to worry about your basic needs, they have less time to worry about like what color your skin is. I would say overall, at least
interesting.
juxtaposed to here.
That's interesting.
But I think, and I don't know how it is in the Caribbean. Is that true? And how places you've visited in the Caribbean or in Dominican Republic that when you've been there, is it more of a class thing or is it a race thing as well, color and stuff?
I think both things are going on. There's definitely hardcore racism. The darker you are, the harder it's going to be. The nappier your hair, the more you're going to get flack about it. There's also there's like a regional thing. There's you're from El Cibao. They say like Cibaeños. So it's like you're from that region, and therefore you are this. There's any way you can divide, people will do it. And but yeah, there's in my experience, the Caribbeans, Dominicans particularly, in my experience, there's definite racism, there's definite colorism, there's definite, you are better if you appear more, European, Spanish. If you're fairer skinned, if you have quote unquote good hair, there's a lot of that stuff going on. And they hate Haitians, and there's the Haitians are black, and we don't like them. That's something that's going on. That we also hate Puerto Ricans, and and Cubans hate us both.
Right.
And there's this weird hierarchy there. There's this, and there's a class thing with that too. There's there's a class thing there. I think where Cubans, I grew up with one particular Cuban lady thinking I was just trash because I was Dominican. She just, and the way that my friend explained it was she just doesn't expect you to have any class. That's what he told me. And I never forgot that. And it was, just solely based on the fact that I'm Dominican and I present as brown skinned kid with nappy hair, and so there's that going on. But then I'd go home, and then there's anti-black racism going on, with my uncles, and homophobia as well. There's like it's the whole gamut of prejudice and just miserable, terrible ideas.
And I'm not saying that doesn't occur in Latin America. It's hardcore in Latin America. I'm saying in some places class is a little bit more of a thing than it is in
I can see it
with race, but definitely in other parts of Latin America. Oh man, yeah, it's hardcore. I mean, it's pretty bad, and based on color of skin and the whole nine. And so again, I'm saying all this stuff because I think it is a very hard thing to explain to people in the United States or white America or even for black African Americans, black folk. how different Hispanics are.
Yeah.
We're talking about all the things that connect us, right? You hear someone, everyone's, one person's grandma is like everyone's grandma, right? Like I know what that is. I know what that archetype is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to tell you about it. Like I know what that is, right?
Right.
And that's cool. And the language thing, some jokes, some music. One of the wonderful things I think about Latin America is that we all eat beans and rice.
Right.
It's great. It's great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like staple, right? But like, for example, like my family in Ecuador, like they don't eat tortillas. Like they don't know what that is. They eat rice with everything, but they don't eat tortillas. They don't know what that is. I mean, they know what it is, but they just don't have it. They don't make it. They don't eat it.
Yeah.
And that's weird to me because in Central America, I mean, that's every meal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there is a difference. There is a lot of similarity, but there is a difference of what it means to be Mexican. And then even with that, there's so much subcategories with Mexicans.
Yeah.
From what it means to be from Central America. And even there with Central America, it's interesting because Central America, if you ask certain people there, they'll say Central America is 5 countries. They don't include Belize and Panama because culturally they're distinctly different. Other people, 7 countries. Most people don't really care.
Right.
But there is some difference there. And then you get South America, which is, again, kind of like I explained, there's the Andean nations. But yeah, people in, Argentina and Uruguay are going to be different than people in Venezuela or Brazil. It's just culturally, it's going to be different. And then you bring in the Caribbean. So there's a lot of ways in which there's a lot of connections. But there is so much difference with Hispanics. So this brings us to the point here in the United States, politically, I guess. And this is really hard to explain, I think, to people, and you tell me what you think, is that, so you're basically importing all of that when immigrants from Latin America come here to the US. Like those don't die when they come to the United States.
No, they get more complicated.
They get more, I guess, right.
Yeah.
They get more complicated. So when you're talking about the quote unquote Latino vote or the Hispanic vote, it's not a monolithic group. I mean, it's so different. Mm-hmm. It's so different. It's so different. Like, I've known a lot of friends or a lot of people that are from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic. They're very different in some ways from people from Honduras or El Salvador. Like it's different. And I think that is where it's more of that part of the nesting or whatever is like, it's very Caribbean culture, which is distinct. Whereas, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador is very, kind of the bedrock of Central American culture. And the regions kind of come into play. How can you ascertain what the Hispanic vote is in the United States when it's so different regionally in Latin America? How are you on, forget parties for a minute. How can any party talk to Hispanics when there's just so much difference between them? And how do you think about this, about how it works here?
I mean, it's, we talked about all this complexity between the cultures of nations and within nations in Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. And then we're introducing this other element of now American culture and American history and American groupings and mixtures. And, Chicanos are not the same as Mexican, right?
No.
Tejanos are not the same as Mexican.
Nope.
New Yorkers are not Puerto Ricans. They're different. There's something going on there, right? There's the added element now. And then we're trying to lump all of this together under one label. And this is what I mentioned to you earlier, is that it seems messy because it is. And I would try to explain it the same way that I would say, it's just as ineffective as thinking you have the black vote. What the
Right.
hell is the black vote? Right?
Well,
Like-
I agree, but I think there's a distinct difference between that in that, how do I say this? With the black vote, it's a hard thing to quantify.
Yeah,
Black Americans are just that. They're Americans.
sure.
Right? They've been here for hundreds of years, and there's a obviously very ugly history about that. But they are Americans, right? Maybe they've been second-class citizens, or they've been treated that way from our government and from society. But nevertheless, they are Americans.
Right. But we talked about too that America is like 50 different countries. Right?
Yes.
So like
yes,
a pocket of black people in Texas is going to be very different from a pocket of black people in Minnesota, right?
100%.
And you're lumping those people together and thinking they're going to vote the same because they think the same because they are the same. That's crazy.
Right. Well, and that way
it
becomes.
I do agree I do agree that it's more complicated with the Hispanic thing.
Yes.
Because now you're bringing in people from other countries, or maybe first generation, second generation Americans.
Right.
But the cultural impact is still there from their other country. So it's there's more complexity. I can see that.
Yeah.
But it seems just as nonsensical as saying, the black vote or the white vote. Or
100. Yeah, 100%.
It would be more accurate to say we've got the Floridian vote.
right.
And which would include white people and black people and Cubans and everyone else. I feel like that would probably be a more accurate target to hit. Like you'd be able to hit that more easily than the Hispanic vote, because Cubans in Miami, they're going to vote differently than Dominicans in New York, right?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe not perfectly, but man, that's a hell of a blurring you're doing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. I do agree that there is so much similarity. And I'm not saying one is more complex than the other. I think they're complex in different ways. But there's a difference between black folks in West Baltimore and black folks in Austin, Texas, or South Carolina or something. With Hispanics, again, I mean, you're painting the right picture, I think. It does become there is no Hispanic vote. I'll put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist.
Yeah. I don't think there is. I think that's crazy.
I don't know if there's is or isn't a black vote. I don't know about that, but it kind of trends that way too, I think, in some ways.
Yeah.
Where you're absolutely right. So you saw this from like kind of the exit poll data, and you don't want to lean too heavily on that stuff, but there's something there about it.
Mm-hmm.
It surprises me when Democrats and or liberals are surprised when Hispanics vote Republican.
Right.
And that being surprised about that says how completely fucking ignorant they are about Hispanics in general and motivations for why immigrants from Latin America come here and all the rest.
Right.
Hispanics, there's just different types, but if you want to look at low skill versus high skilled, I hate those terms, but
right.
there is a different type of ethos that is kind of prevalent with Hispanics, where overwhelmingly, I would think, immigrants from Latin America, they're usually coming here I think all immigrants come here for this reason, but to work hard, to have more opportunities than they do in many other countries, and to take care of their families and themselves. In many ways, true conservatism, not Trumpism, not some of the populism, but true conservatism is more primed for meeting the motivations for many Hispanics coming here, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because it's a focus on pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and individualism and working super hard. And if you work hard, you get places, and, you know, working a system and building your way up, and, you know, all of these types of things. And, you know, you're rewarded for your merits. And, you know, there's certain things like that where, you know, that just doesn't happen or exist in many Latin American countries.
Right.
That's just not, there's not an infrastructure for a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a conservative party, I'll use conservative loosely, that's saying this stuff on top of, you know, kind of the staple, like there's some of the cultural religious stuff in there, right? You know, very conservative religiously, which kind of maps onto the Roman Catholic stuff. Then you also have like, we're going to give you more money with the tax cuts and, you know, all those things. And so that makes people feel, you know, there's, whether you agree or disagree, you have to be able to say, if you're coming from a Latin American country with abject poverty or, you know, developing world at best, that system is going to be appealing.
Sure.
That's going to be very appealing in certain regions.
Yeah.
And so when, you know, a handful of Cuban Americans or Hispanics in South Florida, you know, substantially vote for Trump and the Republican Party, that doesn't surprise me. But on the flip side, you had a bunch of Hispanics in Nevada and Arizona that voted for Biden, which is the fucking point. That's the point, is there's so much variance with a big group of people that I think you just have to abolish the Latin vote. And it's just garbage. It doesn't help.
Yeah.
And it does have to do more with regions and so more kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah.
The New York vote or the Floridian vote or the Nevadan vote, like that kind of makes more sense for people.
Even that would be incredibly imprecise, but I think it would get you at least a step closer in the right direction. Because I mean, you know, I read this piece earlier by Antonio Garcia Martinez, Latin Explaining the Election. It's a great piece, and it's talking about this. He's Cuban.
I read that piece, yeah.
Yeah, he's Cuban. He's from Miami, you know, and he really breaks it down, like what it's like. He's like, look, this is what's going on. This is how they view the left. You know, you're talking about people who escaped a revolution that was a leftist revolution, and it was, you know, so when they see people like Bernie Sanders and AOC, they're thinking this is fucking Che again.
Yeah.
You know, and they don't want anything to do with that.
I mean, they're completely allergic to anything remotely close to any of that.
Right.
I mean,
they don't want to hear it.
Completely.
Yeah, they're, you know, understandably, they're like, fuck that. You know, I mean, I went to visit Cuba. It's so beautiful there. It's such an interesting place.
I've heard.
And, you know, there are Cuban people in my family, and there are Cuban people on my fiance's side of the family too. And their attitude was kind of, well, have fun, you know, like tell them I said goodbye. You know what I mean? Like there's just they don't want to hear it. They're done with that. You know, and a lot of people, it's funny to lose sight of that because it's such a thing that we all know about. But yeah, and you know, in addition to those things, there are a lot of cultural things that tend to transcend and can be generally considered Hispanic cultural norms. You know, there are definite, you know, gender roles, right? There are very strict kind of perceptions about what a man is supposed to be like.
Sure, yeah.
Right? There's a lot of machismo. There's a lot of posturing and bullshit, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of I'm a man. I don't cry. I don't get hurt. Nothing hurts. Nothing bothers me.
Right.
You know, I drink, I eat, I'm the tough guy, that sort of attitude. There's tons of that in my family. Everybody,
Oh yeah.
I don't know if I know a Hispanic family that doesn't have at least some element of that going on, right?
Same for me as well.
Right. And that is going to have an effect, right? So when you have someone like Trump, who is, the bravado and the posturing and all that stuff, it's mirroring a lot of these qualities, right? So
it's the cartoon version of that is what it is. And that's that animates people like that.
Yeah. And, the way that they're going to filter that, the way that I've seen people do it, people in my extended family, like people on my father's side of the family or my mother's side of the family, they're like, Trump's going to come and he's going to set things straight.
Right. That's
the attitude they have. This guy's going to come. He's going to stop all this bullshit that's going on. Right. These people are fucking around. They're making a mess. He's going to come and establish order. And it's this domineering, authoritarian thing that speaks to them. And that's going to have an impact too. We don't want these crybabies. We don't want these, liberals who are trying to mope around. We need somebody who's going to do hard work. And he's, right. they're projecting because Trump is none of these things, right? But at least the semblance of it is enough to entice them. And then when you have on the other side, you basically have people shoving them out. Their rhetoric about, socialism and that sort of thing, that's anathema to them. And I'm shocked that people were shocked because none of it surprised me.
Well, again, the shock of it, legitimate shock, was the thing that's deeply concerning. The other thing about this is, and I wrote a piece about this, which is you have to conceptualize Latin people as predominantly, not entirely, but predominantly, or a good percentage, as working class as well.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of similarities with, I guess you could say, white working class or people out in the Midwest. There's a certain type of similar mentality, I guess, when it comes to work. And again, this happens every 4 years. Democrats don't, they either have the wrong messaging or the wrong priorities, or they will go and they will talk to Latin people every 4 years about immigration. And the majority of Hispanics don't give a shit about immigration. Like, they care about it as much as the next person does, right? They nominally care about it. They don't want to see people harmed. They don't want to see, xenophobic actions. They don't want a fucking wall usually. But there is a type of way of like, I care more about how do I get money in my pocket? How do I have a job? How am I economically secure? Talk to me about that. And when the Hispanic vote, whatever that is, and liberals go and they talk about immigration, it's completely tone deaf to what their actual needs are. Yeah. And that creates a void for the cartoon asshole that's going over there as like a used car salesman selling you the worst shit on the lot because it looks nice and he packages a nice way. So people vote for that because it's what they want it to be. Right. There's nothing substantive there. So that shouldn't be surprising. But the problem is that there's no substantive alternative for Latin people on the left, I don't think. I think there is many people where it works and it's fine and people can see through it or whatever. But I'm saying kind of common folk, immigrants, or maybe some first generation people that live in certain areas, or they're very working class, blue collar. They don't want someone to lecture them about immigration and think that's their most important thing, or, tell them how they need to start putting an X in their fucking words to, explain how they're supposed to do things. It's just completely zero compass of what's actually there.
It's a weird kind of tokenism
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
think about it, because it's
Yeah.
based on a caricature. It's like, well, oh, you're brown, right? You speak Spanish, therefore you must have
All
some
of these
connection
things.
to the the immigrant experience, the refugee experience, and
Mhm.
therefore you're going to care about the things that I'm talking about.
Mhm.
There's a similar kind of assumption on the left with the black population, right? Like people treat it as a given that
Mhm.
black people are going to vote Democrat, otherwise you ain't black, right?
Right. Right.
Like there's this weird assumption, and it makes sense in a way, right? Because the left has been the party to push
Sure.
for these policies and these reforms and these things that
Yeah.
have benefited black people, right? So the assumption is of you have to be on our side. The other guys are not on your side,
Right.
right? But that's completely discounting the way that people think. The
Right.
way, black people, a large number of them are incredibly conservative. They're religious.
Yeah,
They're
especially I
incredibly
think
conservative.
especially black men in particular,
Black men in particular, yeah, exactly.
trend conservative, yeah, in some
Right,
ways.
and they share a similar kind of machismo bravado type of thing as what I mentioned earlier. There's a
Mhm.
little bit of that there too, and that's that's going to influence things. It's weird that the left is blind to this. They appear to be blind to it, or maybe they just they just keep bashing their head against the same wall. I don't. It doesn't make sense, and it doesn't help you win. And I'm not a political strategist. I'm not a
Yeah, me neither.
I find politics incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, yeah.
But what you're talking about are people, and you're talking about what really should be going on is, hey, look, these are our ideas. This is how we're going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
So taking it as a given, like, oh, you're on my side, right? Because brown, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you're brown, and come on, brown people hang out here. You should hang out here too. That's not
Right.
going to convince anybody.
Right.
It's what are you going to do? What are you going to give us? What do you understand what we care about?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there are a lot of people who are they consider themselves liberal. They're on the left. They really do want to help these people.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They really do care.
Yeah.
But they have a fundamental misunderstanding of what the game is, because if they try to speak to like a Cuban American who lives in Miami, I feel like they're going to have this out of body experience where they're like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you're supposed to understand this. What is happening, right? And
right.
and the Cuban guy's like, we've been trying to tell you, you don't listen.
I think that's right. I think that's the hard part about it, is that they're many on the left aren't informed about this, and it doesn't seem like they would allow themselves to change their mind about some of those things. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah.
But it does seem where there's a platform and or an ideology. That's what's kind of, so you're talking about ideas and kind of the individual. It seems like there's less space or less room for that. And because of that, people can see through that. It's like, no, I'm not down with that.
The Latinx thing is a perfect example, actually.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
I've been calling it lexical imperialism.
Oh, that's a perfect way to say it.
Because here's what's happening. What's happening is, oh, you're using this gendered language. We don't like gender being this way. So we're going to come in and we're going to take your savage language and we're going to impose our wonderful, modern, advanced corrective ideas onto it. And we're going to make it better.
Yeah.
We're going to take your thing and we're going to make it better because we know better than you. And here we go. So here you go. Now you must speak this unpronounceable nonsense. Like, how condescending is that? How is that supposed to include anyone? You're excluding anybody who cares about their language, anybody who feels any kind of connection to it. And even if they would be amenable to what you're trying to do there, the imposition is going to put them off. Just the fact that you're just doing this, you're suddenly Latinx is a thing, but the people who are considered Latinx have either never heard about it,
Right.
or they fucking hate it.
Right.
So what's happening here? Are you just trying to make yourself feel better? What's
Right.
going on? Like, do you actually care about the people that you're referring to here? What is the end goal here? So, you know, I know that their intentions are good. I know that they care about people and they're trying to do what they think is the right thing. But there are these weird missteps that are based on assumptions they're making or just time they're not taking to think things through. And they manifest themselves in things like Latinx that's going to put off an entire population of people who are just going to be like, well, fuck you. That's crazy.
Right.
You're going to come and destroy my poetry. You're going to come and language.
Right.
You know, fuck you. And that's what's going to happen.
Well, and to that end, I mean, yes, there's good intentions or they mean well, but then there's no epistemic humility on it where it's like, hey, we got this wrong. Okay, maybe we should pump the brakes on it. Nope, you got to double down and go harder on it. And then on the about the language thing, it's so wild to me. You know, not only does it sound absolutely like a word salad, it makes no sense. It's one of those things where, yeah, I totally agree. The way you said it, you know, lexical pluralism is great. Yeah, it's a bunch of, you know, white liberals, you know, saying we need to completely change how an entire language that's been around for literally millennia. And, you know, all the things you said, I agree with 100%. But go back to the earlier part of our conversation. What was one of the unifying things
right
for all Hispanics with the 22 countries or whatever it is? The first thing you and I both said was language.
Right.
It's the one thing we can agree on. It's the first thing we said. And all of a sudden you have, you know, woke white liberals saying, no, you guys have been speaking wrong for thousands of years. We're going to tell you how to speak properly with gender non-conforming language because we want to make, you know, a small subset of people happy. Like, of course that's going to make people upset.
Right.
I could maybe see this if this was coming from, you know, Latin academics from, you know, wherever. And they were like, you know, whatever. We've been thinking about it this way. We should probably try and think about it this way. There would still be pushback. There would still be, you know, people are very, you know, outraged about it. But then there's the, you know, the Pew Research. I bet they had, I mean, they're great people over there at Pew Research, but I'm sure they had fun with this. You know, 3% of like Latin people even knew what the fuck Latinx was. Right. And I remember I showed it to my dad one time. It was a couple of years ago when it first started kind of, you know, really popping. And he was just like, he literally looked at me confused. Right. And my dad's not old, right? My dad's in his mid to late 50s. He's not old. He was like, I don't know what you're saying.
Right.
What are you telling me?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, and I explained it to him again. He goes, I don't know what you mean. What are you talking to me? He couldn't compute it. He was like,
right.
So I had to literally break it down. And my dad's not a dumb dude. And he finally got it. And he goes, these fucking people need to find a job and do something with their lives. That was literally his response. He was just like, what is wrong with people? And I'm just like, look, I'm with you, Dad. I'm with you. And I've told people.
Well-intentioned nonsense.
Yeah, I joke about it with my white friends. I'm like, if you ever call me that, I will slap the shit out of you. Right. And I'm half joking, half serious. It's like, don't call me that.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's almost never going to come up for me. But I did actually 3 years ago now, I'm pretty sure. I did a reading at my old undergrad, my college. And, you know, it was a bunch of Dominican American writers. They put us together to talk about Dominican identity and whatnot. And I presented a typically contrarian point of view, but it was called, you know, ¿Qué eres Dominican X?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dominican X. And it grated on me, but I didn't say anything. And so, you know, there are some Spanish speaking people who are adopting it, but it's it's a very, very small
Mm-hmm.
population of people who are in college. They're young.
Yeah.
They're very tuned into the wokeness. You know, I'm
And that's
sure
something that I think would, if it were to be more mainstream, I mean, it sort of is now, but like very, very mainstream, I could see probably more outrage from
I
Latin
think,
people that would be like, yeah, stop saying this shit. Like, I don't want
yeah,
to hear
I
this.
think that's inevitable. I think
Mhm.
it's mainstream to you and me,
Right.
as we're running in these circles that are talking about these things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We're kind of paying attention to this specific broadcast, right?
Yeah.
So we've been aware of it for a while. I've been just scoffing at Latinx for 3 years.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty sure at least 3 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it keeps building, and I mean, the majority of the wave is coming from liberal white people who are trying to be respectful. They're trying to do the right thing, right?
Right.
So, you know, none of this is to knock anybody, because I understand you're just trying to do what you think is right. It's just when you sit down and think about it for a second, it's ludicrous and condescending.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I mean, I'm not trying to trash anybody, because like,
yeah,
but to be fair though, what's the motivation behind doing this? Like, no one, who's asking for this? Like, who is asking for to change an entire language? Like, I don't
right.
know. I don't know who's asking for that.
Is
But
there like an originator of Latin? Do we
um,
know if there's someone? I haven't heard of it, if so. But it would be amazing to just point to one person and say, "What did you do?"
right. Yeah, I know. Right. I vaguely remember reading. It comes from academia, and
Yeah.
I don't remember where. I don't remember where. I have to look. I've read somewhere that it comes from certain academia, and I can't remember where.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, I don't lose sleep over this stuff, right? And I've never had to really encounter it personally. Like, no one's ever called me that, or
Right.
said anything like I'm not. Again, I'm not losing sleep over it, and I don't. My kind of rule of thumb for a lot of things is I don't give things oxygen. Like, I give things oxygen that deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of stuff just doesn't. And I just don't do it with this stuff. But I do think that, I get it. Like, the motives or maybe the intentions are right. But that, good intentions doesn't really mean anything all the time, right?
No,
You can do
no,
some horrible things with good
no.
intentions. And it's like,
Yeah.
that has to be, checked. That has to be evaluated on the ideas itself.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to do that much gymnastics because you want to be that inclusive to completely change a language that's used in 22, 23 countries for thousands of years. Maybe that's a little too far.
Right. I wonder if because so far it's just, putting an X at the end of the label for people.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
But we're not at the moment yet, as far as I know, where, Mesa is going to become Mess X.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
like
I couldn't imagine trying to speak.
Yeah. Right. So like, serve me some chuletex.
Yeah.
My rice and beans. Like, I don't know how far they expect it to go, but the entire language is gendered, and it's binary.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It is. Yeah.
But it's binary. That's just how it works. Those are the mechanics.
And again, I don't even know radical folks in the Latin community that are like, it's like when you talk about, let me see, what is it? Like, if you have a group of boys and girls, you then include them as niños. So you lean masculine, on the masculine ending or whatever.
There's so much to unpack there.
And so it's like, and then it's like, I mean, how far are you going to take that? Are you really going to take that? Like,
yeah. And it's funny because this ties together with what we were talking about earlier about revisionist history and about, are we going to leave it alone, or are we going to keep trying to, to put another metaphor on top of it? Are we going to keep trying to remake Star Wars? Are we going to just fucking leave Star Wars alone? Right? Like, you got it right the first time. Stop fucking with it.
Right.
it's kind of like that. Like, are we going to we're going to try to correct the language to conform to our modern day notions of gender and, you know, binaries are bad and that sort of thing? Or are
Right.
we just going to understand that the gendered nature of the language doesn't necessarily have to reflect an attitude about gender roles and, you know, sex be something that is disputed now? Like, it doesn't, those two things don't have to be connected in that way. We can disconnect them. We can say
Right.
the language is gendered and that's okay.
And I think that also the thing with that is, well, okay, like I'm fine. Like language will evolve over time. So if these things need to be corrected for, it will happen organically and over time. And that's not to say that you can't have, you know, some stimulus or some push for that or that direction. I'm not a, you know, absolutist on that stuff or really anything, but I do think it feels very, very, very forced. And
Yeah. And it's
that's
because
not
it's
helpful.
Yeah. And it's because it's for another purpose. It's not about the language. It's
Right.
about making the language do something for this purpose, right? So we just want, you know, we want social justice. That's what we're after. This is creating a problem, or someone has decided to look at it and say this is problematic. Just like we look at an old interview with John Wayne and we have to posthumously, you know, erase this guy.
Make him
He's already fucking, you know, he's already been canceled. He's gone.
He's been dead 40 years. I mean,
right. So, but you know, somebody decided to dig him up and chastise him and then bury him again ritually, right? So
yeah.
It's the same sort of thing where we're doing this to show something. So it kind of touches on what you and I discussed in DMs earlier today, actually. What I started calling an us, the opportunity to signal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So someone looked at the gendered nature of the Spanish language and decided this is an opportunity to signal. I'm going to take Latino and Latina and I'm going to change it into Latinx. And I have done some social justice for the day.
Right.
I mean, you haven't.
Right.
But what you have done is make a huge fucking mess that's pissing off a ton of people, and it's going to make your actual true endeavor, which is worthy and worthwhile and matters, much more difficult for yourself, because now you're going to have all these people complaining about this stupid thing you shouldn't have done, instead of talking about what matters.
And that's the issue with it. Like, you know, if it's helping or pushing for something that matters,
right?
Okay, maybe I could see that. But many times, much of this stuff is much ado about nothing. It's you're focusing on the very specific thing that you want, because you want to change literally everything in Western culture, and what's happening is you're ignoring completely the actual things and the actual issues that do matter. When I was talking to I think I was talking to Brittany King. I think she brought this up with the Black community of like, okay, we can protest and we can, you know, march and we can do all these things. That's cool. But if we're getting really lost in all these details and meantime policy and legislation is still hurting us, is still hurting Black people, well, wait a minute, maybe that's the whole point. The whole point of doing this, to cause awareness or to do something, is to make substantive change, not just did we change the name of a school from a Confederate general. Like, fine, okay. But if that just says, all right, I did my social justice for today, I can go home and sleep tonight because we changed the name, but you still have, you know, voter ID laws, or you still have gerrymandering, you still have, you know, all these other issues within, you know, our politics or within our culture, with our society, that is hurting certain groups.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a little more important than deciding whether you put a fucking X after a certain, you know, name in Spanish. Like, I just, and that's where it's just, there's no plot here, right? It's just, there's no compass. I look at it as this kind of, you know, digital ADHD, right? It's like blowing up a balloon and then letting it go, and it just flies around the room. There's no direction whatsoever.
That's great.
It's just whatever, wherever it's going, and we're going to keep doing that. And you're basically just, you're going in a room and you're just peeing on everything, and you're like, yeah, well, why isn't it clean? And it's like, yeah, because you're just, what do you expect, right?
Well, it's interesting because this connects to the argument about words.
Yes, it does.
About the piece that I wrote. I mean, the attitude is the same, right? The idea is that we're making these superficial gestures that are designed to correct some problem, but the actual problem is being ignored for that reason. Our focus is in the wrong place. So we're worrying so much about Latinx, about the gendered language, and we're not worried about the culture of machismo that becomes reflected in someone like Donald Trump and enticing to an entire population of people for that reason, right? So like that seems more of a relevant thing to tackle and deal with than say, oh, okay, so there's something going on here, and it's complicated, and it's tough, and it's very deeply ingrained, and we have to parse it and figure out the mechanics of it, figure out why it's this way and how it works, so that we can appeal to people's better sensibilities, right? Because they're making poor decisions on those grounds. That's a much better use of your time than fucking with someone's language, the structure of someone's language. It's these superficial gestures, these things that, and I think that part of the reason for this, at the very least, is that, it's small fish. It's the same thing that's going on when people go after comedians for making jokes.
Yeah. Right.
Because it's easier to try and wreck a comedian's career for making a rape joke or something. Right. It's a spicy joke. It's crossing the line. It's, Dave Chappelle makes some trans jokes, and it's touching on these difficult things, making people uncomfortable. It's easier to, make sure he gets shitty reviews for his special and pillory him online and talk about what a horrible person he is. And you're more likely to have an effect there than to come after this politician who is funded by these corporations who are pushing for these policies, right? That's messy. That's dangerous. That's difficult, right? So in a sense, I understand it, because, you can make this small move and it looks good, it feels good. And you can walk away saying, I've done my thing. I've quashed an evil for the day. I understand that motivation, but you have to, at some point, you have to realize you're Don Quixote. You're fighting windmills. Except the difference is that there are actual dragons. You're just ignoring them. You're running the other direction from the dragons, and you're fighting windmills. And it's hard because I focus so much on compassion and being compassionate and trying to understand why people feel the way they feel and why they behave the way they behave, right? In order to try to get them to persuade them, right? But at the same time, it's like, man, I keep telling you and you keep doing this, and it's not helping anybody. You're making it so hard for everyone. We're on the same side. That's ultimately what's so frustrating about it is, I care about the things you care about. I want the things you want. And you're making it hard for all of us by taking these weird routes.
I totally agree. I mean, that's the thing that's so frustrating is I'm spending more of my time and my bandwidth having to not go on every detour path and just try and stay on the main path, which is the same goals. Right. And it's like, if you don't follow me on each detour, then you're against me all of a sudden. It's like, wait, what? No, I'm not. And I think that's what's really frustrating. And so I mentioned this at some point in the conversation where I'm the same. I'm trying to always find the balance and find the compassionate way and try to really understand people and really understand their positions, no matter which side they fall on politically or religious or whichever way they're thinking, and try to leave it in the arena of ideas and make some headway. And I sometimes that's successful, sometimes that isn't, but that's what I'm trying to do the same. So okay, I have a decision to make in terms of, do I release all of this at one time, or I do a part 1, part 2? I'll have to figure that out.
Oh wow. Well, I'm down, man.
We've gone at a good clip, so this is probably a good stopping point. Which is interesting because we talked about a lot of things, but in some ways we really talked about the same thing, which I think is super fascinating. So yeah, this was super fun. I could probably keep going too, but I want to, make sure that it's concise and that everyone doesn't turn it off after an hour and a half.
Right. It's not a Dan Carlin episode.
So, but hey, I really had so much fun. It's everything I thought it was going to be and more. And I would totally want you to get back on here at some point in the future, and we can keep getting at some of these things. But so tell people real quick where they can find you online or get your stuff, and yeah, I guess anything that you have coming up or anything like that.
Yeah, sure. So angeleduardo.com. It's probably the easiest place to direct people. But I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. You can get links right from the website there. Mm-hmm. But it has a pretty nice selection of all the different sort of work that I do, my writing and music and even photography and stuff like that. So you can check all that stuff out there. Mm-hmm. I've been pretty active on Twitter, probably too active lately, but the conversations we get into, especially you and I and New Liberals podcast and, Pseudo Badger and Conceptual Doc.
Yeah. Well, some fun conversations.
Yeah. So we've got a cool little cohort of people just kind of picking at each other's ideas and twisting them around and flipping them over. And Rod Graham is usually the instigator here. He'll post something and we'll just go off and it'll turn into a series of crazy tangents on all kinds of different topics. It's really interesting. Mm-hmm. So shout out to those guys, and angeleduardo.com, and so I'll see you on Twitter.
Yeah, man. Thanks. It was so much fun. I really, really enjoyed it. It was nice to be able to get all those topics out and really just kind of get at the kind of deeper layers. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. It's awesome. It's so much fun.
All right, man. I will see you soon.
Yeah, take care.
All right, man.